Now? Okay, very good. So I say this is a long title. I want to thank all of you for attending this morning's event. It's going to be a bit challenging because it's a virtual event and it has to be managed various ways. The first thing I was asked to tell you is that this event will be recorded. So I hope no one has a problem with that. In a few minutes, I will present the rules of the game and a few words about the workshop. But for now, I want to first say that it's my great pleasure to introduce Máximo Torero, who just entered the room, who is the chief economist of FAO, which found some time in his super busy schedule, especially this and the coming week, to address this event. I know, Máximo, you need to leave very soon, so I give you the floor for your introductory remarks, and you can use the lectern or you can stay where you are. It's up to you.
Thank you very much, and apologies for being 2 minutes late. So, Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, welcome to this meeting that is extremely important for us, is to empower cities and local governments towards sustainable and inclusive urban and territorial food systems transformation. So it is my pleasure to be with all of you in the occasion of the Committee of the World Food Security, and I welcome the focus of this side event on empowering cities and governments for achieving sustainable food system transformation, which was a topic that yesterday, I think, was agreed, urbanization as one of the key topics, or the key topic for next year for the CFS. And this meeting is organized by FAO together with the Urban Food Systems Working Group, an informal group including 26 organizations, UN agencies, civil society organizations, academia, city networks, among others, chaired by FAO and GAIN. The efforts of the working group has been crucial during the UN Food System Summit to get cities and local governments recognized as key actors of the food system transformation. So I take the opportunity to thank the working group for excellent work done. Where are cities an important entry point for FAO's work on agri-food system transformation? Why FAO, which is usually associated for its global and national level work on agri-food systems and usually from rural standpoint, interested in this topic? For this, it's important to look at some facts which are extremely relevant for the work we do. By 2050, 68% of the world population will be living in cities, with 90% of the increase occurring in Africa and Asia, which will lead to greater pressures on natural resources, especially water and agricultural land. About 70% of food supply is consumed by inhabitants in the areas classified as urban, and this is expected to increase with urbanization. Now, it's important to recall that urban definition varies country by country, so it's not a standard definition, but looking at the official definition of all these countries, 70% of the food supply will be consumed by inhabitants in urban areas, classified officially by the countries. Many urban and peri-urban communities are exposed to food and nutrition insecurity, combined with the diffusion of diet-related non-communicable diseases, as well as rates of overweight and obesity, which are on the rise, particularly in urban settings. Cities consume almost 80% of the total energy produced in the world, while producing 70% of the global waste. They also account for 70% of the global energy-related greenhouse gas emissions. Technology and improvements in infrastructure have resulted in closer links between rural and urban areas, and that's what we call the urban-rural continuum. As a result, between urban and rural agri-food systems are more linked, and 90% of the world population live within 1 hour of an urban area of 200,000 people or more. Territorial food systems links are also becoming relevant entry points for food systems policy and governance, and urban areas are key in this respect. Besides, in 2018, some 58% of the world population lived in cities with fewer than 1 million inhabitants, while close to half of the world urban dwellers reside in settlements with fewer than 500,000 inhabitants, and 41% resided in settlements with fewer than 300,000 inhabitants. Urban areas go beyond megacities, and many of them are tightly linked to rural ones with food system links. While agriculture is predominantly a rural activity, essential components of the food system, all the processing, the packaging, the transformation, the logistics, take place in peri-urban and urban areas. That's why when we assess the impact of COVID-19, for example, during the COVID-19 period, we had to look at the whole system, and that's where the major impact happened. And that's why the processing happens in peri-urban and urban cities because of energy access. And also there is a lot of labor segmentation in those areas. Most of it is female labor force, and that's why they were so affected during the COVID-19 pandemic. So it is fundamental to consider the potential of small and intermediary cities, which can become a driving force for urban and rural poverty reduction and sustainable food system transformation. Cities are therefore fundamental for food system transformation and for the achievement of a number of SDGs linked to the food system transformation. The FAO strategic framework of 2022 and 2031 includes urban agri-food systems as one of the 20 priority program areas which FAO is implementing along with the partners such as the UN agencies and city networks. The Urban Food Agenda and the Green Cities initiatives are key corporate flagship initiatives of FAO at this point. The FAO Urban Food Agenda was launched in 2019 and focused on urban food systems. The FAO Green Cities was launched in 2021 and focused on green spaces and urban food systems. So, ladies and gentlemen, many cities and local stakeholders worldwide are taking actions towards sustainable food system transformation, and many partners, such as the members of the Urban Food Systems Working Group, including FAO, are supporting them to integrate food systems to their local policy and planning. However, there is a lot of work to be done to ensure that cities and local governments contribute to national and global platforms and decision-making processes that promote sustainable food system transformations. We firmly believe that policy coherence at urban, territorial, and national levels is fundamental to create enabling environment for accelerating the agri-food system transformation. A key point is that although many factors shaping food systems operate beyond the urban scale, decisions made by cities and local governments will have far-reaching implications. Aligning the connecting institutions operating at national level with those at urban and local levels is essential, and the same may occur at the local level of urban administrations. Food systems issues are separate portfolios than environmental, health, and infrastructure. Therefore, the key challenge in front of us is to find ways to close such institutional gaps if we want the so much coveted policy and program coherence across a spatial domain. Easier to say than done, platforms such as the Urban Food Systems Coalition can be an opportunity to join forces towards building the multi-level food governance, considering cities and local governments as the driving forces. The Urban Food System Coalition can be also an instrumental for supporting national governments in implementing the pathways they share as part of the Food System Summit process. At global level, platforms like CFS can become fundamental venues for local and urban food system issues to be discussed with national governments and other stakeholders. Urban and local governments deserve a position in the governance systems of the CFS. Therefore, I am pleased to see that the urban food systems is one of the key issues raised by the HLPE in the last note of July 2022 as one of the 7 topics, emerging topics that they want to follow. So many thanks to Dr. Bernard Lichtman, who is today with us, and his colleagues. I am also pleased to announce that we are in the process of agreeing that the SOFI 2022, produced by 5 UN agencies, will look at issues related to the urban food systems for this year for the publication of 2023. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude and invite member states, resource partners, and food system stakeholders at all levels to join forces and ensure that cities get the appropriate recognition and support to act towards sustainable agri-food system transformation properly and effectively. And joining the Urban Food System Coalition, I think, is an important step. And there is a lot of work. I think this coalition could be filling significant gaps in this area, which still we have not progressed too much. And that's why we want to raise this area also into the SOFI of next year. So I wish you a great, fruitful discussion, and thank you very much for your attention.
Maximo, thank you very much for your introduction. I think it puts the whole issue into perspective, but also for the good news. 2 major reports being prepared on urban food systems continues support to this topic that for a long time has been not as prominent as it should. Let me then continue with some housekeeping issues, which because this is a hybrid event, and several speakers and speakers will also will talk virtually via Zoom. So there is an online audience also of participants, and so some of those rules that in the last couple of years have been announced by this organization will hold. First of all, as I said in the very beginning, the meeting will be recorded. We should say that there is interpretation available in Spanish, English, and French. For those participants that are online, they click at the bottom on the globe and they change language. For those that are here, there is a dial that you can use in front of you. Announcement. Please do not use built-in computer microphone or a conference call microphone. Use a USB headset or earphones with integrated microphone, not Bluetooth, or use a USB clip-on or personal external microphone. To speak in person, please lower your mask and speak close to the microphone. If online, please raise your hand and wait for the moderator to call you. If you're online, please put your video on when you take the floor. For the online audience, throughout the sessions, please type questions in the Q&A box. I want to underline the Q&A box because lots of people confuse the chat box with the Q&A box. We'll be monitoring the Q&A box for questions from the virtual audience. Chat will be used for communication among the participants, but it won't be monitored. So after this, let me say a few words about this session. I think that the context has been extremely well described by Maximo, but let me say that our experience from the summit, the Nutrition for Growth Summit, the World Urban Forum organized by UN Habitat, the Afri-City Summit, which was organized by the Union of City and Local Governments in Kisumu a few months ago. We think that in observing also the country plans, we don't think that the strategies of decentralization of power to local governments, as sufficient as they are, they include food. That's our observation. And this was despite the importance given to urban food systems from various UN agencies, city networks, and many local governments that can be considered champions in promoting food systems transformation at urban and local level in general. So the current ecosystem of support to the transformation of urban and local food systems, we find it inadequate, institutionally, financially, in terms of human resources. And this covers financial and, as I said, all kinds of support, knowledge, and technology. So how do we change this? We need to take strategic decisions on what can be done at all levels for ensuring that urban and local food systems get recognized as a priority agenda at national level, but also worldwide. This will be the focus of our discussion today. As you can see in the concept note that we have circulated along with the invitation, but also from the profiles of invited speakers, we broaden the discussion to include also local and territorial aspects of the food systems, because they're very important parts of the urban food agenda. If you look at the data, you see that 90% of the global population lives either in an urban or peri-urban area or within 1 hour of a city of 20,000 people or more. So the catchment areas of urban areas in terms of food, but it also in terms of services is quite wide. And we have to take this into consideration. As you will see, there are important initiatives which will raise the profile of urban and local food systems. And some of them have actually been announced by Maximo. One of them, of course, is the Urban Food Systems Coalition. I repeat again, this is a very important coalition. It's one of the emerging coalitions of the World Food Summit, of the UN Food System Summit, and we want to raise this issue also in this workshop. So the organizing team has proposed some questions and issues to the speakers. We don't want to straitjacket them into specific answers, but we wanted to put the framework in their responses. Who are our speakers? The session will start with intervention from Bernard Lehman, chairman of the steering committee of the high-level panel of experts on food security and nutrition, who's here on my left, and he's in presence. Then we'll continue the discussion with Ms. Anna Scavuzzo, who is the vice mayor city of Milan, who is on a virtual connection. Unfortunately, Mr. Raka Buming, which is the mayor of Surakarta, Indonesia, informed us this morning that due to force majeure, he is not going to be able to attend. We will hear a video from Emilia Saiz, which is a Secretary General of United Cities and Local Governments, who is currently in Seoul for the UCLG 7th World Congress and Summit on Local and Regional Leaders. We will continue and have the opportunity to listen to the perspective of Manuel Lapao, who has appeared also in past events that we organized, which is the Director of Cooperation at Community of Portuguese Language Countries, CPLP. And then, last but not least, to my right is Mary-Laure Cretas Corredor, which is the head of, if I massacred your name, please, you can repeat it when you take the floor. I do that. Head Food Systems Section, Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, Switzerland. I see Maximo Torero has another event that he's supposed to attend, and so he asked kindly that he leaves at around 7:45. And so I want to thank him one more time for finding time to say some very important words. So let's call upon the speakers to start the debate. Bernard, I take the liberty of calling you Bernard because I know you for a long time. You are the chair in the high-level panel of experts on food security and nutrition of CFS that has made enormous contribution to our knowledge on a lot of issues in the past. And as Maximo said, and I think it's confirmed, in the note published in 2022, the panel have identified 7 key issues. One of them is about urban and peri-urban food systems. And for what I understand, it's actually going to be a report of the high-level panel of experts in 2024 on that issue. Big development. Along with Sophie, I think we're going to get a lot of visibility, but we got to make that visibility felt by local and urban administrations in terms of empowering them to manage food systems, not only on their localities, but also nationally. So I would like you to talk on the issue that is, how do you see the voice of the local and urban food systems be heard in global platforms, in national platforms? CFS is one of these global platforms, and my view, having served CFS for many years, is that this voice is inadequate. But anyway, you have the floor. You can elaborate as you wish in 4 minutes.
Thank you so much, Kostas, for the kind introduction. Yes, it is. Sorry. Thank you, Kostas, for this kind introduction. Yes, it is very good possibility for us, HLPE, to deal with this subject, creating a report in the next months on urban and peri-urban food systems. As you know, we had the opportunity to define and to examine what are the most critical, emerging and enduring issues in the food systems, and we identified that the peri-urban and urban food systems are in a special situation. this special situation has to do with the growing of the cities, with the migrations from the land areas to the rural areas to the cities, and a lot of challenges are existing in these peri-urban and urban regions. We have also the ambition to analyze the situation along the 6 dimensions of food security, of the definition of food security. How is the situation for the availability of food? How is this food accessible for people in this region? How is it used? In my own experience, I can say that very often in peri-urban areas of big cities in Africa, with high degree of migration, we have not a good infrastructure to ensure food safety, for example. And also the question of stability, how stable is the situation? But we want also to analyze the situation along the criteria of agency as a criteria to show what is the ability of people to have enough autonomy in their decision in the food systems, around the food systems. This depends from employment, from jobs, from money they have, and also of the choice they can have in food system. And the last point is the sustainability of the system. Sustainability in a broad sense include human health, because it is very important to have also this dimension in sustainability. Science knows increasingly more about the problems we have, the challenges we have in these regions. But policy making has, despite this growing knowledge, a need for action. This need for action remained great. In other words, food security is often poor in urban and peri-urban settings due to what I said: immigration, labor market, and lack of access to healthy food. What we proposed to the CFS has been adopted yesterday, as it has been said, and we are very happy to have this issue on the fast track. The CFS will discuss the other issues during the next months for the years 25, 6, 7, but for the year 24, it's already decided to have urban and peri-urban food systems on the radar with a report of the HLPE. We have several hypotheses because we are at the beginning. We are not at the end of the report. We are at the beginning of the report. And we have several hypotheses, so that the fact that 60% of the food is consumed is bought, is sold to the end consumer in the peri-urban and urban areas. This is a special challenge because we have different type of markets. We have informal markets, so-called informal markets, and we have the formal markets. And we could see in the last 20 years shift. The informal markets were displaced more outside of the cities, and in the cities and in the peri-urban cities, we had more and more formal markets, with the problem of the price differences also for this in this market. This is a special challenge. Also, the land management issue is a very important issue. Where is the land where the smallholder will produce food? Where can be the home gardens? Are the home garden in a situation to be there for a long time, or will they have to move because settlements are growing? We have plenty of questions in that direction. And your point, Kostas, is also in the framework of our recommendation. We will on the base of the analysis, check if there is a necessity to have a multi-layer governance system in order to have the voice of these actors at the level of the CFS. Maybe I can elaborate a bit more in the second round.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Bernard. I will go now to Ms. Anna Scavuzzo, who has also appeared in other events that we organize. She's the vice mayor of the city of Milan, and we know that Milan and food, Milan has set actually a great example for management of food systems at urban level. Not to mention also the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact that unites hundreds of urban areas around the world to talk and think about food. Anna, it's my honor to give you the floor. Please.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting Milan, but also thank you for invite, I think, the network of the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact also, because I would like in some way to underline also the role and the key role of cities, not just Milan, but Milan is a good example, but above all about the network of cities that can be crucial in this transformation of food system. I think that we have a double issue, because I would like to underline how important is for us in some way to let the voice of local and urban food system be heard in global platforms, including CFS and including all the governance mechanism of governance, and vice versa. I think it's very important also to keep in touch with such platform, also because cities are crucial in a concrete way. And so the relationship between different levels can be very important. First of all, because the pacts intended to support city governance and relevant stakeholders when designing and implementing context-specific policies. So the network has the aim to support and promote, and so also to have the chance to collect enough information about life in the cities that can be useful also in global platform. And then it's not by chance that the first category of the Milan Pact word is governance and ensuring an enabling environment for effective action. So I think that this pragmatic attitude that cities have is very relevant and important. So you have to design a framework, you have to go beyond the differences also between countries. You underlined this fact at the beginning of our meeting. So the difference between the different countries, also cities are very different from each other. But it's very important to keep in touch with a natural city that have the same goal, that go in the same direction, and try to have different way and different practices. The framework is very important, the monitoring framework to also in some way evaluate and assess the different policies is very important. And I think that the international global platform need to keep in touch with cities, because cities means people. And every policy you want to promote, you need to engage people. So we can be also in your alliance, and vice versa. We need to promote this alliance to in some way permit cities to keep in touch with each other, also to have a common policy. And then I would like also to underline the fact that I believe that we need to define mechanism and coordination system for enabling this environment for effective action. For instance, our network and city network and the Urban Food System Coalition could advocate towards national government to continue to recognize the role of cities worldwide. And so it's very important, this exchange. We work as network together with you, and you help us in some way to recognize the role that we can have together with you. We have all we have clear our role, but it's not still well understood. And so currently, the system is still based on a state level, national frameworks, government tools, but we need also to spread in all over national governments. Second thing, we need to provide financial support to local authorities. And I think it's very important because governments, stakeholder alignment, multi-level policies, programs, you have a lot of ideas, a lot of projects, a lot of money also in some way you can help us to reach also some resources, but we need dedicated fund for local governments in order to in some way have this pragmatical approach concrete. Last not least, I think it's very important for us, for the network, for the cities and for the platform to promote mutual learning, because cities feel that there is a great scope in strengthening food systems at the national and international level by building on the experience of cities. And so in these exchanges, we can give to the platform, to the national international organization, the chance to keep in touch with pragmatical approach, and vice versa. We need a global horizon in which we can work all together in our differences. Last not least, I would like to mention that in a few days we will go to Rio de Janeiro, because we launch the 7 Million Pact World Call, and we have the Global Forum based this year in Rio de Janeiro. And during the Million Pact Worlds, we can share, we collected more than 600 best practices from cities all over the world. And I think it's very important because we keep in touch with this level. So we share best practices, we keep in touch together, and we decide together which is the direction in which we want to carry on. I think that this kind of alliance must have an alliance also with a upper level, also because to support cities in food system transformation means to in some way have an holistic approach all over the world with all the differences, and we can in some way help you to keep up to all these differences. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. You described some of the ways by which the city network, especially the Milan Pact and the nascent coalition, could actually work to support cities, but also to support their visibility and influence on the global scale. So you outlined some of the needs that the cities have. Now, I'm just going to go a little bit outside my the written script here and go to Marie-Laure, who is the head of food systems section in the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation in Switzerland, and say, well, both speakers outlined some of the needs of the local administrations, but we all know that aid is usually provided to governments. Is there any mechanism that you think of, or some of your experience, that we can support local administrations or urban administrations? You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation and for the question. A first reaction when you say development cooperation is going to government, I think not only, at least for the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, we have a long tradition of engaging with local government, but also in local governance, strengthening a multi-stakeholder approach and participatory planning process and so on. So it's not new for SDC to engage locally. What is new actually, it's to engage with cities, because we had for many times a very rural focus in general. And I think for 10 years, more or less, we gave a bit this shift to engage always more with cities and with different also city association like ICLEI, for instance, in India on climate resilient cities. What is even more recent, and I would say maybe 2 years ago, we decided to engage with cities in food systems. And it's now we start discussing that, and I think it's really a kind of maybe a new trend. And it's also interesting to see in the SDGs. If you look at SDG 2, there is absolutely no mention about urban aspect. If you look at the SDG 11, there is no mention about food. So I think a few years ago, it was not so obvious, and we all a bit in this process of learning and looking for these interlinkages. And I see why we see now the city as an important actors. Definitely what we've heard so far from Maximo and from Anna, there is a role for the city to play. There is the proximity with the producer, the territory, and we see also from a development agency perspective and with a leave no one behind approach. For many years, agriculture, rural development, food security was really thought on rural, poor and smallholder farmers. And in our last strategy, we decided to see it a bit more holistically and take the food system approach, a circular economy approach as well. And for us in the coming years, we want to really have this focus on smallholder producers, but also vulnerable and urban consumers. And it's easier said than done. And we have now a few projects that also are quite recent. And we see that talking about food system is now a bit, I would say, the mainstream, but when you need to implement it at the local level and you need to sit together with different stakeholders in a city and say, what does it mean to have the food system approach? It's much more challenging. One of the challenges is the multi-sectorial approach. So there is not one ministry or one department in the different local institution. It's not only one territory, you have to take a kind of a region approach as well. And where we had the long experience to engage with producer, cooperative and association, we have very little knowledge about consumer organization, and sometimes they are known. So I think there is a new field there on how we work with cities, with the different stakeholders in the city. But I don't think that it's new to finance and support local government. What is new is really this link between cities and food system.
Thank you very much for putting it in my place. I was making a general statement about maybe I've been too long in FAO that development partners fund mainly national governments, but you made an excellent point. But you mentioned a key word, which brings me to the next speaker. You talked about territories and regions, right? So it's not just about the city and urban, but it's also the recognition that the urban has effects on more general areas around it, right? The urban food systems linked to the territory, to the locality, to food systems, to rural areas that now are important. So I'm just going to ask Manuel Lapao, who was in a different order, but I think it's a good time to bring him in, which is the Director of Cooperation at Community of Portuguese Language Countries. It's a group of national governments, but they work a lot on territorial development, including food systems. And he's joining us virtually. So tell us, Manuel, what are the key roles of urban food systems governance in a territorial approach? How do you see it in CPLP? The floor is yours. Manuel is on virtually and one of our virtual speakers. Please.
Good morning, Costas. Thank you for having us. Let me start by greeting you, my fellow panelists, and of course, all the participants in this event. So as far as CPOP is concerned, we have a political vision, we have a strategy, but that is quite different from implementing the strategy and the vision in the field. We are currently celebrating our 10th anniversary of approving our food security and nutrition strategy. It was approved in 2012 in Mozambique. And in that strategy, it is clear, it includes a territorial approach to food systems governance. But the strategy is a multi-level, a multi-stakeholders and a multi-sector approach to this political vision. And it's very hard to implement it. It has been implemented in our 9 member states, but it has been a hard challenge, let me tell you very clearly. And that is due to the fact that CPOP is an intergovernmental organization, but is a very peculiar one. If you remember, CPOP is scattered in 4 continents. We have member states in Latin America, which is Brazil. We have 6 member states in Africa, 1 in Europe, and another 1 in Timor-Leste. So we don't share common borders. In order to implement a political vision in the strategy at this level, it is really a huge challenge to find countries in different development processes with different political visions in order to have them in the same scope, in the same framework to implement the strategy. Nevertheless, we have some successes already been implemented. As far as cities or local authorities, they have the possibility to participate in this governance structure created by CPOP, which is the CPOP Council on Food Security and Nutrition. And that is very well, it is clear and is stated in the statutes of our Council of Food Security and Nutrition. And under that framework, they are expected, or we expected, to establish or to use existing networks to coordinate and facilitate this participation. Why is that? Because at CPOP level, we have sector forums representing areas of interest, and those forums are our direct links to this governance structure. Let me give you an example. We have at this strategy and at this governance structure presence of civil society. We deal directly with the civil society forum of CPOP. We have parliaments. We deal directly with the Parliamentary Assembly of CPOP. We have universities and academia, and we deal directly with the Forum of Universities of CPOP and Academy Forum. But we don't have it yet for local authorities. We expect them to implement these kind of structures, but it doesn't exist at CPOP level. Nevertheless, there are some manifestations at CPOP level that could gather local authorities, and we are working closely with them. But for the past 7 to 8 years, we haven't achieved success so far. But on the other side, we have achieved success on the establishment of national councils. And national councils on food security and nutrition, coming from the CPOP strategy, have been established since 2013 in Cape Verde, in Guinea-Bissau, in Mozambique, in Timor-Leste, in São Tomé and Príncipe, in Brazil, and in Portugal. And there is a good hope for the future, because municipal food councils are currently being discussed in one of our member countries. This is the first approach to the team, and that is happening right now in Cape Verde. So hopefully we can use this experience to bring them to the other member states. So we have lots of difficulties to implement the participation of local authorities in this strategy. First of all, and that has been already stated by the Mayor of Milan, time and resources. We lack resources and staff to support process in our 9 countries with this regional approach. It's hard for us to do it. We need to foster our mobilization with local authorities. They need to be more aware of their important contribution in a principle of subsidiarity to this strategy. And it is our fault, of course. We need to talk more with them, but we need to find this right approach and this right forum to establish this dialogue. And of course, policy is always involved in these different political parties with different visions. We have different decentralization processes currently being implemented in our member countries. There are huge countries, Brazil, Angola, and Mozambique. You have these different dimensions of very large countries with small countries like Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde. There is also the absence of national and supranational networks that would facilitate our process. So for future steps, and to conclude, I believe that we will continue to push for the implementation of this governance framework at local level, at CPLP. Our intention, of course, is always to share our experience and learn with experience from others. And as territorial food systems government is concerned, it is clear and it's fundamental to promote food sustainable systems at CPLP level and worldwide. And we are deeply involved in setting up a coalition to promote territorial food systems governance. It has been presented already, and we are trying to find the right approach to bring it to life. Our main goal is, of course, to contribute to the strengthening of our international multi-level governance architecture to promote sustainable food systems, including its importance in the international political agenda, institutionalization, funding, and impact. We will try to give our approach to this broad strategy, but as stated before, we have a huge challenge ahead of us. Thank you. Over to you, Costas.
Thank you. I see there is an agenda for raising the voice and participation in CPLP of local governments and local administrations, and that's very hopeful. We will monitor this in future events, and we'll invite you to tell us how is it going? Is it feasible? Are the stakeholders aware enough to take matters in their own hands, etc. So thank you very much, Manuel. Now, continuing the discussion on regional and local, we have a video from Emilia Saiz, who is the Secretary General of the United Cities and Local Governments, UCLG, who is now in Seoul for the UCLG 7th World Congress and Summit of Local and Regional Leaders. And that's the reason she cannot be with us. So she kindly sent us a video, which we will watch, and then we're going to move to the discussion. Can we have the video, please?
Greetings. I am delighted to join you today at this session, 50th session of the Committee on World Food Security. Our world is going through unprecedented changes. We can all agree that during these past years, the pandemic has actually shown us how interdependent everything is, how our societies are dependent from each other, but also the vast separation that exists between societies. We at United Cities and Local Governments, representing a vast constituency of local and regional governments around the world, realize that we are living a change of age, not only a time of changes, and that the new vulnerabilities that have emerged over the past years need a different approach to almost every single model that underpins the construction of our societies. We know that we have to deal with unprecedented inequalities, with unprecedented ecological crises, including a climate and biodiversity emergency. And in all of this situation, in this current context, the discussions around food, how we relate to food, but also the governance of food distribution and food production are going to play an increasing role at all levels of government, but also in all parts of society. And this is why we are delighted to join you today, even if we cannot be there with you, because we are celebrating in South Korea our World Summit of Local and Regional Leaders in Daejeon. And in this gathering, we will adopt a pact for the future of humanity, for people, a planet, and government that is going to underpin the need to change our relationship with nature, and also encourage local and regional governments to play a different role in the production and consumption systems, including those of food. We have a strange relationship with food. Many of the current generations consider food as just a commodity, something that you can consume, but food is actually much more than that. It's part of our culture, it's part of our rights, it's part of our health, it's part of the very nature of being human beings. And we think that cities around the world today, the urban era, has a very important role to play in changing the perceptions that we have around food, but also playing a much concrete and a stronger role in food systems. This is why we're very happy to be part of these discussions, and why we want to continue playing a role in the coalition. We want to continue playing a strong role in the Urban Food Systems Coalition together with our partners, C40, ICLEI, all the networks of local and regional governments. And you can count on us to continue contributing to the thoughts, to the visions, but also to encourage local and regional governments around the world to play a much more proactive role in this discussion. We are eager to follow up your deliberations. We are very happy you will be following ours, and we look forward to a more sustainable future, developing a sustainable future together for people, for planet, with the government. Thank you very much.
That was Emilia Said, always enthusiastic about the cause. I think we have given not exactly 1.5 hours for this, but they chopped 15 minutes. And so we have to close at 9:45, right? So I think this is supposed to be a dialogue. So I'm just going to move directly to questions from the floor and from virtual. I'll try to be even-handed and get a couple from the floor and a couple from the virtual audience. So, and of course, the panelists are very welcome to ask questions to other panelists or whoever they feel like asking questions. Before I start the question and answer, I just want to inform you that Anna Scavuzzo had to leave earlier because of an urgent commitment. So she won't be available for responses or discussion. But since we are taking questions, let me go first to you, and then we have a representative of UN Habitat, which is of course the par excellence UN organization for urban. And so I will give the floor to Florence Segal, who's sitting there representing the UN Habitat. So you have the floor first.
Thanks a lot. Just two reactions of the last speaker. I think for Switzerland, we engage within the Food System Summit and then the coalition with a strong focus on agroecology. So you could ask yourself, why am I bringing this topic here? And I think there is a lot of linkages. It's not obvious when you just put it like this, but actually in the different principle of the agroecology, part of it is on resource efficiency, but a lot of it is also on other factors of equity, of participation, co-creation, and in particular connectivity. And I think there is really an opportunity to bring also cities and agroecology closer together. And I could say much more about that, but we have interesting projects starting. One is called Nutrition in City Ecosystem, NICE. So we could send also the link so you have a look at that, where we bring together different partners, different stakeholders, and we look at agroecology, nutrition in a food system approach in cities in different countries. And the second comment and a bit of publicity is when I hear the different speakers, there is a link between cities and youth. In a few minutes, we go into the plenary for the youth item agenda. And maybe you've seen in the hall, there is a an exhibition. This is part of an initiative that was supported by Switzerland. It's called Bites of Transformation. It's a group of young entrepreneur, activists, researchers. They came together to discuss what food system mean to us. How can we transform it? And I think there is really an opportunity for these linkages between youth in cities, also in rural areas. And basically, they are very much in what we heard from the last speaker about cultural elements, unifying vision, and a lot of discussion about true cost and true value of food. And I think all of that is very much also related.
Thank you very much for putting cities in some of the areas that we don't quickly think about, especially the agroecology, but of course, cities and their catchment areas, changing food habits in cities can have a big influence on how things are produced or etc. So we take that angle, but you brought a more general angle to this. So I'll give the floor to Florence Segal, an old colleague and friend and representative of UN Habitat, for a short intervention. Thank you, Florence, you have the floor.
Thank you, Costas. UN Habitat is delighted that the CFS has adopted the high-level panel of expert recommendation to include strengthening urban and peri-urban food systems in the context of urbanization and rural transformation as one of the 7 emerging and critical focal areas for the coming years. This will benefit from the work carried out since 2016 by the CFS open-ended working group on urbanization, rural transformation, and implications for food security and nutrition. In the context of Agenda 2030 and the new urban agenda, UN Habitat is pleased to pursue its work within the CFS and to join FAO, networks of cities, local and regional governments, and relevant coalitions to support this vital transformation of food systems for sustainable territorial development, with particular attention to small and intermediary cities. Multi-level governance has been identified as a lever of change in the preparation of the 2021 UN Food System Summit, and we believe that strengthening policy and regulatory framework for inclusive and food justice for all and everywhere is essential. Urban-rural linkages and leaving no one and no place behind is particularly important in the wake of recent and ongoing crises and the challenges generated by health crisis, conflicts, and climate change. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Florence. I think we all know about and should know about the new urban agenda, which came out of the last big meeting in Peru, I think, which has issues there related to food. So we appreciate your presence here. I'm going to go to the virtual, and I give the floor to Marina Bortoletti from the UNEP. Marina, can you hear me?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, please.
Okay, good morning, good morning. This is Marina Bortoletti from the United Nations Environment Program, and we are also very happy to be part of the Urban Food Systems Working Group and also on the coalition. And my question is related to the negotiations of relevant international agendas, such as the COP27 that will be coming soon, also the COP biodiversity. And as we know, it has been very difficult to see targets related to urban food systems in those negotiations, despite the fact that food systems in general, and especially in cities, are increasingly contributors for countries to mitigate climate change and also to conserve biodiversity. So I just would like to hear from the speakers on the floor what are their opinion about good principles in terms of multi-level governance in the context of the negotiation of those international agendas, and if they have suggestions of any mechanism that could improve the participation and contribution from cities in this process, including in the integration of targets related elements for urban food systems. Thank you so much.
If any one of our speakers wants to take that, or maybe someone from the floor. I think the question was very clear. It had to do with the presence of cities and local governments in the negotiation. So Bernard, please.
Okay. We, HLPE, are in the situation to start a report on all these questions with the variety of dimensions. And our attitude is at first to say and to see that a lot of excellent things are already done all over the world, locally. Nevertheless, it seems that it's not yet enough, because we have the challenges we have described, Maximo Torero also described, so that improvements are necessary. We should learn from each other. This is also one dimension. And it is important in that context that the solutions, the local solutions are also shared with the solution from others. And at one moment, there is the point of the governance at local level. How these voices, it's not one voice, how these voices can be present in a good way in an entity like CFS. And I had the privilege to observe CFS for years. And we can also see that among the representatives of the governments, there is a very high variety of opinions on one issue. That is quite normal. But we had in the last 15 years a change from agriculture and food to food systems. And nowadays, my personal opinion is that not all aspects, problems, and actors of the food system are enough represented in the debate of CFS. So that it could be a point we will stress in our report. I cannot anticipate exactly what can be the result, but I think this is very important in a long run, in a midterm run, long run, to have a better representation of the relevant actors in an institution like CFS in order to deal the problems at the global level, because global decisions have only local impacts. The impacts are always local, and this awareness of what are the local impacts, it needs to know what is going on the local level. So that I think this will also be an important chapter in our report. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernard. I think that was a good message to the CFS governance. Let's see where we can put. I think having an experience of 7 years of secretary of the committee, especially during the reform, I can say, of course, it's my personal opinion, that, for example, the advisory group, the city and local governments could have a bigger, more substantive presence, just talking about this, or having a coordinating body of city and local governments which meets before CFS, and then they articulate their concerns during the plenary in one way or the other. Just some mechanisms. Of course, I can say whatever I want because of my personal opinion, but I think those are some of the entry points for the CFS, and this will actually go into addressing some of the issues that were that were raised by Marina from the UNEP, because I think those bodies that represent civil society and private sector in the CFS, they also have a weight in other types of negotiations. And so, or other kinds of global fora. So if we had something in the context of the CFS, which is the par excellence Committee on Food and Nutrition, I think we could use it also for other fora. So here is a solution, possible solutions. But anyway, I think I'm running out of time because I talk a lot, but I have another one. The working group on urban food systems, which represents 26. I'm going to go back virtual, and then I'll come. Yeah, we'll come back. It's the 26 organizations. It's chaired by GAIN and FAO, and Nick Lay is participating also in the secretariat, but it's actually coordinated by GAIN and FAO. And Annie Treven Jones is the representative of GAIN. So I have her on the virtual attendance, and I give her the floor for a short question or remark. Annie, good to see you.
Thanks very much. Can you hear me? I'm actually visiting our countries in Africa. Can you hear me, Kostas?
Sorry? Yeah, you can go ahead. Can you hear? Because I can't. You can hear? Okay, go ahead, Annie. Everybody else can hear you. No? Is there a technical issue? Okay, until we resolve this, let's go back to the floor. Please.
Thank you very much. My name is Tineke Oenema. I'm the Executive Secretary of UN Nutrition, and I'm very pleased with this side event. I'm also very pleased that there is more and more, progressively more and more attention and acknowledgement of the concept of territorial approaches. Do I need to use this one and not this one? Okay. I don't think. Can you hear me better now?
We can hear you.
Ah, okay.
I have to wear the thing, but.
Okay, so I keep this one on as well?
Now we can hear.
So I continue as I started.
Good.
Good. These hybrid events are very complicated. Anyway, I was
Tell me
just
about it.
saying that I'm very pleased with the progressively increasing attention for territorial approaches. I just want to highlight the linkages and the potential there is between nutrition and territorial approaches. It was already touched upon by several of us. I just want to remind you that already in 2014, during the second International Conference on Nutrition, there was one of the recommendations for action was to promote and support local food systems. So that was already a starting point from the Nutrition Society. I am now UN Nutrition, but when I still was UNSCN, the predecessor of UN Nutrition, we did together with UN Habitat, so I'm very pleased UN Habitat is in the room, this document about urban-rural linkages and territorial approaches for sustainable development. Obviously, it has nutrition in the core. And what it did is it took the 10 principles of UN Habitat, the guiding principles for urban-rural linkages, like human rights, environment, planning, agriculture, and cross-referenced those with nutrition. So resulting in a few recommendations. So I really hope that the high-level panel of experts will take into account this document. I think you can read it in your coffee break. It's really thin, but it's very useful in information. So yeah, so I just wanted to flag again the opportunities of nutrition and healthy diets in this space of territorial approaches. I think the lady from UCLG put it very well. It's with food and diets that we bring the things together at a local level. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tineke. I have a speaker here that wants to take the floor. Please, go ahead.
Good morning.
Identify yourself. Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks, Yakir. I think we want some guidelines. My name is Fatma Tahir from Sudan, National Convener, Food System National Convener. We want some guidelines from the coalition because like the case in Sudan, part of the value chain of food system is at the rural areas and the other part at the cities and urban areas. For example, in the rural areas, you have the land, you have the fisheries, livestock, all the food sources. But when we come to the cities, first, the migration. There is a very comprehensive migration from rural areas to cities for education, for medicine care, everything. We have the research centers in the cities. We have the financial institutions, innovations, and everything. So how we can link to work simultaneously to empower not only in the cities food system transformation, but how we can work both of them together. This is one question. The other question also we want to go in Sudan is interested to go in this coalition. How we can do this process. Thank you so much.
I will be, and we all be grateful to you because you open a very important issue, the issue of what is actually the coalition can offer to city and local governments, but also to national governments, right? To facilitate this link that you just talked about. So I have to say, you are one of the speakers that represents countries, and actually you said you were a convener. And this kind, so what you're saying, we should have some guidelines. And so this is something that this coalition, and I'm putting it on the table, should actually do. It's the first time I hear something concrete about the coalition other than the sharing of knowledge, et cetera, which is very important. Guidelines. That's an excellent point, and thank you for raising it. Do I have time? I have an incredible team, which I didn't introduce, but Cecilia, Caio, and Marco, that I'm only the front. The work is done by them. So they're sitting right there in the front seat. Do I have time or should I close? Okay, if they don't cut us off, I will continue. Just a second. I think I have somebody on online. Paul. Can I, Paul? Yeah.
Hi, Costas. Hi, everyone.
Hi. Good to see you again.
Great to see you, and greetings from South Africa. My name is Paul Curry. I'm the Associate Director of Urban Systems at ICLEI Africa. And I also just wish to offer support for this very valuable side event and for the momentum around urban food systems that is building and building. To keep my points short, a lot of the work that we have done with local governments in Africa, as well as with colleagues around the world, has indicated that there are a lack of alignment mechanisms between national, regional, and local food policies and food action. And we found that requests from many local officers are for the establishment of these multi-level governance platforms. We've already seen quite a bit of work emerging around multi-stakeholder platforms within cities, but the need to then connect in national, regional, and local actors to improve alignment of policies, projects, and programs. So I just want to add that in, and if there's time for feedback from some of the panelists, it'd be great to hear about how they think we can strengthen this alignment of policy. But I'd also like to offer an invitation, which is that ICLEI is the focal point for the LGMA at the Rio Conventions. So we represent local governments and regional governments, subnational governments at the COPs. And so the current COPs coming up in both Egypt and Quebec around climate and nature are really great moments to feed in the emerging work around urban food systems. So if you or some of your constituencies will be at COP27, I invite you to the multi-level governance pavilion, where we'll be doing a number of sessions, a number of engagements around food systems and many themes related to climate. So thanks very much. Always a pleasure to be part of these forums.
Thank you very much, Paul. That's partial answer also to something that Marina Bortoletti from UNEP actually asked about presence of this multi-level governance issues in important meetings. Do I have anybody from the floor? Yeah, Florence, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Costas. I would like to follow on the question from the lady from Sudan and from the presentation of Paul Curry. FAO has supported a series of urban food systems dialogue in the preparation of the Food Systems Summit, and UN Habitat collaborated in the preparation on the one of Tunis. What was very clear, and that these dialogues were really useful to bring people together, but that an urban food system dialogue needed to have different people on board. So maybe what national program coordinators in the country could do is say, let's try to have a dialogue in Khartoum or in other cities, and then we would, FAO and WHO, agree on review the methodology to make sure we get all the right people around the table. Logically, the food system dialogue started with ministries of agriculture in most countries. But I think that the challenge for urban is, and we need to really build on the experience generated by ICLEI along those different dialogues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I saw you thumbs up, so I think Florence said something that you are, yeah. Excellent. I think that's a great starting point. Thank you, Florence. And thank you, Paul. Who else wants to speak? I think we already exceeded our allotted time, but I'm going to take one more intervention or question from the floor or virtually, and then we'll close because I think people want to go to other things, etc. Is there anybody? Yes, please. You have the floor. Please identify yourself and
thank you
state
so
your
much.
question.
My name is Lamingwenya. I'm from South Africa, from the Western Cape Department of Agriculture. As I'm representing, government, but also I just want to share some of the experiences that we are beginning to do, working together with the cities and all that. We are implementing what we call Nourish to Flourish mobilization strategy. It's actually a whole society approach where we are trying to, coordinate, with cities, local government, and to really address, some of these things. And we'll be very interested, to participate in this, especially when you are looking at, SOFI report for 2024. I think this could be a very interesting, case that we could actually learn from and build on. So we want to offer, our engagement in these processes.
Nourish and flourish. As a matter of fact, the South African pathway does talk about urban food quite a bit. So it's one of our it's one of our favorites. Well, yeah, go ahead, Bernard.
Just want to say that congratulations for this project. I could visit it a few years ago in South Africa, and this gives me the opportunity to say that we HLPE are now at the starting point, and all your experiences will be our food to create the report. And I am very happy if we could have the links of all the persons with interventions today. Yeah, we are in a learning mode.
It's recorded, so I suppose it's going to become public at some point in time. You see, one of the things that I proposed in the past, the high-level panel of expert reports that are excellent, they get ground truth. That is, they collect in a systematic way things like what was mentioned by the lady from South Africa. Yes. It must be a mechanism, otherwise it becomes only a review of literature or the big things. But we have to find a way, you have to find a way, not anymore me, to ground truth these kinds of things and collect experiences and views from the real world. Okay, all right. I think we've reached the end of this extremely rich workshop. It's extremely difficult to summarize. We will do that at some point and produce a report. But what I'm happy about is we've organized those things in the past. But today, I think we heard some very concrete examples and some very concrete solutions, or some very concrete ways forward about this multi-level governance. And I think the outlook is excellent. The outlook about championing the cause of urban and local food systems and territorial food systems with the two reports, but also I have a feeling that the other parts of the society that are not writing the reports are actually mobilized, and they have started to realize the importance of urban food systems for national and global results. We also got some interesting clues about what this coalition could actually do, right? And how maybe the pathways can actually reflect that better in the future. So we heard about challenges, but we also heard about solutions and ways forward. So the only thing that left for me to do, and then I will release you, so there's so many things that are happening, is to thank you all for your presence here or your presence virtually. And I call you to support this cause, whatever, on whatever forum you participate in that has to do with food systems, with all aspects of agriculture and not leaving out agroecology, etc. Because I think it's important at the end of the day. The world is urbanizing. This is something that's inescapable. And a lot of the fight for the sustainability, the famous sustainable transformation of food system that has become a leitmotif, it's there. It has to start from the local and in the urban. So thank you very much for your presence, and I wish you a very successful rest of the week. And thank the panelists for taking the time to prepare and be here. Thank you.